Welcome to your Artsy Girl podcast. I am your host, Christina Carrere. This is a podcast about art, poetry, and anything about creativity. Sit back, relax, and get your dose of brain food to get your creative juices flowing. Welcome to episode 21. This episode brings us to Baguio, Philippines. My next featured guest is Monica Macansantos. She was a James A. Michener Fellow in Writing at the University of Texas at Austin, where she earned her MFA in fiction and poetry. She also holds a PhD in creative writing from the Victoria University of Wellington International Institute of Modern Letters. Her fiction has appeared in failbetter.com, Women's Studies Quarterly, the Masters Review Anthology, Day One, and Tayo Literary Magazine, among others. Her nonfiction and journalism have appeared in Aotearotica, Takahe, Naratif, SBS Life, and Vice, among other places. Her essay, Becoming a Writer, The Silences We Write Against, was named a notable essay in the Best American Essays in 2016. Her novella, Leaving Auckland, serialized in 3 parts on Failbetter, was a top 25 finalist in the summer 2016 Glimmer Train Fiction Open, while her story, Stopover, earned an honorable mention in the winter 2013 Glimmer Train Fiction Open. She has been awarded residencies at Hedgebrook 2014 and the Kimmel Harding Nelson Center for the Arts 2012 and 2019. Her work has been translated into Spanish and Czech. She is currently Branch's nonfiction editor of Rambutan Literary, has guest edited Aotearotica's Volume 6, New Zealand 2019, and is working on her first novel. Everyone, please welcome my next featured guest, Monica Macansantos. Hi, Monica. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Christina.
So I understand you are a poet and fiction writer based in the Philippines. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm mainly a fiction writer now, but I do write poetry every once in a while. Lately, though, I haven't been writing that much in terms of poetry. Mm-hmm. But I'd like to see my fiction as poetic, or I aim towards poetic prose whenever I write.
Sure. Yeah. And so you are based in Baguio right now?
Yeah, I am. Although I do travel a lot overseas, mainly to the U.S., I actually just arrived last week from the U.S., where I did a writing residency in Nebraska at the K.
Yeah, I read that.
Yeah, and then that was 6 weeks long. And then afterwards, I traveled around the U.S. a bit, and I'm back. So it's sometimes I don't know where I'm exactly based. I live in in different worlds. I'd like to see myself as a citizen of the world.
Yeah,
which is great for my writing. Yeah, yeah.
So you were born in the Philippines?
Yes, I was born in the Philippines, and then when I was 3 years old, we moved to the States, to Delaware, where my mom did her PhD in math on a Fulbright grant. And then after 5 years, we moved back, and that's when I felt completely American. So when we came back, I had to readjust to the Filipino way of life, which was great. I mean, I'm grateful that my parents brought me back so that I know what it is to be a Filipino without having to get that knowledge from secondhand sources. So
sure,
yeah.
Wow, that's very, very cool. So and you stayed there. When did you come back to the States?
So I came back to the States in 2010 to do my MFA in writing at the Michener Center for Writers at the University of Texas. Mm-hmm. And I lived in Austin for about 3 years. And then I came back to the Philippines for a year. And then I just I had the opportunity to stay in the States, but then I would have that would entail me having to get a job that may have cut into my writing time. And then at that point, at the MFA, they kept telling us that you have to make writing central to your life. And I couldn't figure out how to make writing central to my life with a day job that I would have hated. So I came back, and then I lived with my parents for a year. I wrote a draft of my novel, and then I also applied to this PhD program in New Zealand. it was also a PhD in creative writing. And then I left for New Zealand in early 2015, and I spent another 3.5 years in New Zealand. And yeah, I finished my PhD last year.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
And why New Zealand as opposed to United States or any other place?
It's just that, like, I was told that the MFA in writing was already a terminal degree, and I thought that, like, if I was to do a PhD in English creative writing in the U.S., like, it would be, felt it would be overkill. And then I saw, like, how the PhD in the United States was taught, and then there's, like, just so much coursework, and on top of that, like, I just wanted a program that would allow me to write and to, like, as I said, make writing central to my life. And I had a classmate at the MFA program at Michener who was from New Zealand, and, like, before doing her MFA at Michener, she had done an MA in creative writing at the Victoria University of Wellington, and she said that, like, she had very good reviews about her supervisor, or what they call advisors in New Zealand, that he, like, basically whipped her story collection into shape. And I was like, and she said that he was the best reader she had ever had. Like, his name's Damien Wilkins, and I was like, I want to work with this guy. And also, I found out that, like, the PhD in New Zealand was had no coursework. It was just, like, dissertation only. So, like, from the moment you arrived there and started your PhD, you started writing your PhD dissertation, which in the case of a PhD in creative writing consisted of a creative manuscript or your novel, which was like 70% of the thesis, and like a critical component, which was like a related critical study to your creative project. So it was just like 3 years.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Now, did you have to do it? And is there a GRE requirement?
No. That was the other thing. And no application fees. And, like, they also waived my TOEFL requirement because I had already had, studied in the U.S.
Sure.
So, I mean, like, it's...
Could you be a professor somewhere with it?
I'm sorry?
Could you be a professor with it? With the PhD
definitely. Definitely.
Yes,
and, like, with both my PhD and my MFA from the Michener Center. And once I publish my book, I think I'd be an attractive candidate for teaching positions.
Sure.
Yeah. But, like, other than that, like, I didn't do the PhD because I wanted to be a professor, although I would love to teach. It's just that it would give me, I was just attracted to it mainly because it would give me funded time to write. Like, they gave me a scholarship and I didn't have to attend classes. All I had to do was write. So.
Now I have to say, let me just say right here. Okay. People out there in the United States getting their MFA in creative writing. And, I swear to goodness, this is a very interesting option. Let me say, because I'm in the same. I got my MFA here in the United States, and so after the MFA, it's like what? I have to go to work, do the 9 to 5, and then it takes away from the writing and blah blah blah.
I just couldn't do that. I mean, like, I had the option of staying in the States, but to stay in the States legally, I'd have to do that, and I was like, and also, like, I don't know, there's something about America that makes people think that, like, you want to stay there because, like, there's that notion of American exceptionalism that, like, America's the best country in the world and why wouldn't you want to stay? But on the other hand, like, so people were asking me, like, do you want to stay in the States afterwards? And then I'm like, I don't want to stop here. I want to see the world. And I'd read so many good things about New Zealand, seen all those postcard pretty pictures. Of course, like, it's not a perfect country. It has a lot of problems too. But at the same time, like it's
everything
good.
Else.
I mean, even as a writer, it's good to be exposed to different cultures.
This is true.
Yeah.
This is true. And, and it does break, that whole one-track mind that, I love the U.S., don't get me wrong. It's just that when people think, you did mention the exceptionalism and everything like that.
Yeah.
But if you have ever been outside the United States and experienced other cultures, other countries, you realize, wow, there's other ways of living and thinking and doing.
Yeah.
And of course, every situation, there's pros and cons to everything also. But you know what? I'm glad you mentioned it, because it's like there are other options out there.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
It's not just tracking it to MFA program and then dropping out doing the work thing, or going into a PhD program here in the United States, which is nothing but heavy coursework, which is fine too. I love coursework. But, if you want to go on into your writing, this is why we became writers, right?
Yeah.
You just got to do it. And to be in a nurturing environment, people who support you and understand and all that. So, wow, that's great.
Oh, yeah. And of course, like the PhD in New Zealand also entails like academic writing. And people think that I get to go into this PhD and do a lot of writing, but this like creative writing, but at the same time, you have to be quite serious as a scholar. And it was like a bit of an adjustment that I had to do, because I honestly wasn't interested in the scholarship, but at the same time, it made me read a lot more Filipino authors. Yeah. And it helped me situate myself within Filipino literature. And I learned so much just like reading more Filipino authors. So, it didn't take up half of my PhD. It was like probably a third of it, but still it's still like 3 years of like writing time. It was a huge gift.
Was it like they touched base on creative pedagogy and all that? Creative writing pedagogy?
I don't know. Like
how to teach creative writing?
The thing about my scholarship is that it had no teaching duties attached to it.
Okay.
So, and I think that, I don't know, but like since I also taught at a Filipino university, at the University of the Philippines for 3 years prior to my MFA, like it's teaching creative writing is something that you learn on the job. Like I've read books on how to teach creative writing, and they helped a bit, but there's nothing that comes close to like learning how to do it on the job.
Right. No, I agree. I mean, I've taught too in colleges and universities too. But to have a little creative writing pedagogy on how to teach creative writing, it was helpful. I took a couple of courses of that. So I gather you know how to speak Tagalog?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how did you come into writing? Where in your life you said, I want to pursue writing?
It was something that I was doing at an early age, and I think that my environment nurtured me and guided me towards that path, because my father was a full-time writer. He was like mainly a poet, and my mother.
Who's your father?
Francis C. Macansantos.
Okay.
I'm not sure if he's well known in the States, but he's well known here in the Philippines. And my mother is also an essayist and a poet. And like we had a lot of books at home, and I was like just encouraged to read at an early age. It's not that they pushed me into writing. It's just that it's something that came naturally out because of the environment. And also like my dad was a regular panelist at the Siliman creative writing workshop in Dumaguete. It's like a yearly workshop in the Philippines, and they it's like very prestigious. It's quite difficult in the Philippines to get
in Siliman.
Yeah, in Siliman. Yeah, he was like regular panelist there, and my mom thought it was a good idea for him to take me with him every summer, just so that like I'd have something to do in the summertime. And it was it was, I mean, just like you spoke about creative writing pedagogy, and like I learned a lot of that even as a kid, like sitting around at the workshop room and listening to Edith Tiempo like break down the story. And I mean, it was great experience. And like I mean, I was writing a bit, but like eventually I think like because in school, like they thought, oh, you're good in English. Why don't we like isasabak ka namin sa essay contest na to? And then like I'd win this context test. So like it's something that like, I mean, it's something that I fell into more than anything else. Although my dad, like, eventually, because he saw my talent, said that, like, you should be writing more regularly. So I started writing more regularly, mainly poetry in high school. And then in college, like, I majored in English. And then eventually I shifted tracks. And then, like, I shifted into the creative writing track. And then that's where I started taking fiction courses. And that's where I started writing a lot of fiction and where, like, I started loving, like, short story writing. So, yeah. That's basically what happened.
It's great. You have a very rich childhood being surrounded by writers and poets and books.
Yeah. And I mean, it's like people think that, oh, maybe your parents like pressured you into doing this. I mean, I don't think parents would ever want to pressure their kids into being writers because like it's a difficult life and like it's difficult to live like gig to gig and like parents don't want that for their kids. Like in fact my mom for a time thought that maybe I could major in something else like economics. Like she was just like worried about my economic welfare, but eventually she realized that this is what I love. So like she has been one of my most ardent supporters. So yeah.
Well, that's great. It's great to do that early on as opposed to bumping around for years and then realize, in my case, at least that's how it happens.
That teaches you a lot too, though, like bumping around. Like you meet a lot of people, you gather a lot of stories. So
sure.
Like
so tell me about that. Tell me about that residency you just finished up. What did you learn there?
So it was, how do I explain it? So I was given a 6-week residency at the KHN Center for the Arts. They gave me an apartment and studio space and a food stipend so that like I wouldn't have to worry about food or other incidentals. And all I had to do was write. And although I did submit a proposal when I applied for this residency, like once you're there, you don't necessarily have to follow up on your proposal. Like that time according to them is yours, so you can do whatever you want with that time. And in that case, in my case, like my literary agent had just gotten back to me with edits and like thorough feedback on my novel, and I was like, I really want to go on submission with my novel this year, so I tried as much as possible to finish my novel. And in the process, I wrote like 100 more pages for the novel, and then I did a lot of edits, and then like because I was given 6 weeks, and like I finished another draft of the novel. But that wasn't the only takeaway I had from the residency, because you're not alone. Like you're with several other people. In my case, like there were always like 5 people at a time at the residency, and like at various like, I mean, they had like various time, like they asked for like, sometimes some of them would like ask them for 3 weeks and like 2 weeks. So like I met like a bunch of people, and then by the time I reached my 6th week, I was like, I'm the ghost of Cage, and I've been here for so long because I've seen so many people, and like the people I met here during my first week aren't the same people who are here right now. So
they're various, various like stages.
And I took a lot of walks, mainly with a writer named Rowan Hisayo Buchanan, like because Nebraska City, where the residency is at, is like a very beautiful city, and it's where Arbor Day was founded. So like we'd walk to the Arbor Day Park and back, and then there was another visual artist whom we'd take walks with, and then when Rowan left, like I took a lot of walks with this guy, and then like I took some walks with other people, and then like we were hanging out a lot. So like it was great to like be in that community, and then you learn a lot about your own process and your own outlook as an artist, especially when you talk to the visual artists, because like they have a very different way of approaching art and like seeing things. Like they're very more,
That is interesting because now you're mixing a different genre into the mix, creative expression.
Yeah, and then there was this one multimedia artist who had very interesting ideas about art and practice. So it was great meeting her too. Like Elizabeth Shores was her name. So yeah.
So so you mentioned literary agent. You haven't completed your novel yet. How did that happen?
I had completed a short story collection, and I had I had a novel in progress when I started querying, and people told me that I should target agents who are starting out, who are with good agencies, and luckily I found one, and she's been doing very well since I signed with her back in 2016. She's with Curtis Brown, which was great, and we planned on initially selling my story collection to publishers, and so we went on submission in 2016. Unfortunately, that didn't work out, so we decided to just wait for me to finish my novel first, and in the meantime, she's been helping me out, and also my supervisors at Victoria were helping me out. Make this novel the best book it can be.
So your literary agent gives you she critiques it as well and gives you her feedback. Yeah,
mainly when in my case, she gave the more thorough edits when I'd finished a draft. So she wants to see the big picture first, and she did also a lot of small edits.
Okay. Yeah. See, I like this. I like to learn more about the process. So tell us a little bit, without giving us the whole spoiler alert, just a little tidbit of your novel, what it's about.
So my novel is set in the 70s and 80s. It switches back and forth between the years of 1976 and 1986. And it's about three young people who come of age in 1976 during the height of Marcos's suppression.
I have been there.
During the height of martial law, and they're also in Baguio, which is seemingly peaceful, but has there's a lot of tension simmering beneath the surface because there's a lot of repression going on, and a lot of secrets being swapped, and so what happens is that something tragic happens, and these people have to deal with the fallout from this tragedy in 1986 when the dictatorship collapses and a new administration comes into power. So, yeah. But at the same time, a lot of my novel deals with the middle class. Because I saw that there was, when I was reading these novels about martial law and about the Philippines in general, I saw that there was a dearth of writing about the middle class. It was either about the elite or the very poor, but how about these people who have just emerged from the working class, who have finally achieved a certain amount of comfort in their lives, but have to struggle to remain in their place.
Right.
I was interested in the role of the middle class in the Marcos dictatorship because a lot of the student leaders who opposed Marcos emerged from the middle class, not even from the elite or the upper class, but from the middle class. So they had a lot to lose. And at the same time, I feel that the middle class was co-opted by the dictatorship. They have so much to lose. So either you just go for it or you just keep quiet.
Right.
I feel that I'm not an important person anyway. Marcos doesn't know who I am, so I'll just keep quiet and then let things run their course.
Right. So it's an interesting novel because I've had my own experience growing up in that time frame. So I can't wait to read it. Definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah. So how far into it now are you? You said you're going to be completing it this year?
I finished another draft. It feels complete to me, but I'm sure that there are things that can be improved upon. And it's with my agent right now. She's reading it again. I responded to all the thorough edits she made. And then so it's it feels complete to me, but she's going to read it again and we'll possibly improve upon it. I hope that we go on submission within this year.
It's interesting because this is, the process of getting your book out, shopped to major publishers.
Yeah.
Now, the question is, I know some writers also employ professional editors.
Yeah.
For the final process.
Yeah. The final process, would that mean that they've already sold the book? It's with publishers.
No, before.
Okay.
Before it goes on to, shopping for a publisher.
Oh, okay. I see.
And then, of course, there's another rounds of edits after that too.
Yeah,
but just to get into the door, Yeah,
I never had to do that. I think it's partly because I got a lot of help from my PhD supervisors, just whipping this novel into shape. Yeah, and it was my agent who did all the nitpicky. Well, I don't mean nitpicky in a bad way, but I mean all the tiny sentence level edits. But my supervisors were really great at giving overall
structural
comments, and also comments about character and about this chapter isn't working. Stuff like that. So by the time it reached my agent, it was more or less a clean draft. But then again, there was this one character who had to be fleshed out a bit more, and she also had some questions. And then I also did in Nebraska, I did a lot of structural changes too. So, it's mainly been my PhD supervisors and my agent who've been cleaning up this novel for me.
So how long now from start to finish, or up to now? How did it take you years to get to this point?
Oh yeah, it did take me years. Ironically, I wrote the beginnings of this novel in 2012 at the same residency program where I also wrapped it up. So they gave me a month back in 2012, and I told them in my proposal, I'm going to write a novel. This was right in the middle of my MFA, where people were telling us if you want a book deal, you have to write a novel. So I was I'm going to write a novel. And then so they gave me residency and then when I got there, I was oh my God, I actually have to write this novel. I produced 100 pages. They were 100 terrible pages, but they still helped me shape this plot. And I think sometimes you have to just generate pages, no matter how poorly written they are, just to have an idea of what you want to do as a novelist. And so I had those 100 pages, and then I went back to the MFA and I just wrote short stories for my thesis. And I put it away because I looked at it and I was slightly horrified. And then but they had potential. And then eventually, in 2013, Elizabeth McCracken told me, you're working on a novel. I should look at it. And oh my God, it's horrible. You don't want to see it. And then she's like, that's fine, because I'm really good at reading early drafts. So I showed it to her. And then the summer after my MFA, she is such a generous mentor. She will mentor you even after the MFA. But anyway.
Wow.
So she looked at them, and then I came to her office, and she was like, I've told you in the past that I've actually told friends to stop writing their novels after reading pages from them, and I've actually lost friends. I've had friendships go down drain because of this, but I think your novel's brilliant and you should go on. And I'm what? And so
that's a compliment. After she said that, she lost friends over.
Yeah, and she's take note, I'm pretty honest even at workshop, which she is. So if I tell you that this is great, then you have to believe me. And that I mean, during moments in which I despaired over this novel, I just like went back to that comment of hers that like, I have to finish this. And she's like, if you don't finish this novel, like, I'll be so mad at you. So like, that's what happened. So, but it still took a lot of time because like, I mean, I was a lot of, the process had like, I mean, while writing the novel, I had to learn how to write a novel, and like coming from writing short stories, like you learn that it's a very different ballpark.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so I like a huge part of the process was just learning how to write a novel. And it's probably why it took me so long. And also like there were short stories that I wanted to write. So sometimes like I put in time for like writing new short stories. So like I alternated between my story collection and my novel. And then eventually like in 2015, when I started the PhD program in New Zealand, that's when I like started writing this novel like in earnest. So
yeah, that's great. Well, it's not unusual. I mean, I started my novel writing several years ago, and I you know how I started? I took one or 2 weeks off of work, and I said, I'm going to write this novel. I'm going to start this novel. And that's what I did. I busted out like good 60, 80 pages.
Yeah.
And, you know, ever since then, I've been just kind of noodling those pages and adding it on whenever I can.
Yeah.
So, now it's...
Are you done with it, though? Or, like, is it, like, does it now sort of...
No, it's not done. But I have plans... I have plans on, because it requires research. So if this plan of mine goes through, then I will go full force to it. If not, then I will just have to make do. I'm just going to have to just get this done.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like
sometimes
it's been just hanging around.
Sometimes it's like a matter of like allotting that time to get it done, because sometimes we think that we'll have all the time in the world to finish this book. And like, I remember something that Alan Gerganis, who like was a guest writer at the Michener Center, told us that we don't have enough time. Like we're convinced that we have enough time, but you never have enough time. So
you never do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sad, but true.
Yeah,
however, you just have to, it's like running a marathon, you know, you just got to be persistent. Don't knock yourself, you know, if you don't get to it like you want to.
And sometimes like you have to tell yourself that like a wrong turn may actually be the right turn. Yeah.
Have you talked to your characters? Do they talk to you?
I've thought about them while taking walks. I take a lot of walks. And, I don't really talk to them. I think about them like as if I were like some concerned sister who's like and
well, it's not literal, or it's just figuratively, you know. So just because my characters are, I've known them for a while now, so it's like, okay, all right, so what are you going to tell me now? Where are we going? You know?
Yeah. Like, I mean, I've experienced similar things too. And like, in fact, like it's kept me sometimes from making them do some difficult and terrible things. That's when you have to like enact like some form of distance with your characters. Like some form of distancing. I'm sorry. Like, with your characters, so that you can allow them to do some like pretty awful things, which are like true to their character. Yeah.
Right. You know, the typical, you don't want to all goody two-shoe characters without flaws, or, the fictional techniques.
Is that like they become your family?
Yeah, definitely they do.
Yeah.
So where can the audience learn more about you and your work?
So I have a website. It's monicamacansantos.com, and I update it on a regular basis. And under the published work page, like I have all the links to my work. Like some of my work is like in print only journals, but like a lot of my work is also online. I write a lot of short stories. I've written a lot of short stories that are online. I also have a lot of nonfiction and some poetry. So, yeah, there's that. And then, I have my own poets and writers page.
Good. All right. Well, I'm going to definitely post that link on the show notes and everything.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm also on Twitter, not very regularly, but once in a while I'll tweet. My handle's at Miss Macansantos. So. Yeah. So yeah.
Great. So yeah, we'll connect there also.
Thank you.
Do you have
so I have, you asked if I had poems, which I do have. I also have an excerpt from my novel, which is in Women's Studies Quarterly, and I have the copy with me right now. So I could just read a paragraph. I could read a paragraph from that. So anyway. So the title of this excerpt is A Fair Face, and it's an excerpt from the novel in progress, People We Trust, and it's told from a young woman's point of view. She has returned to Baguio to give birth, and she's also an NPA, a member of the New People's Army in the Philippines, but she's come home to give birth because she can't give birth in camp. So, all right. Their eyes rested on Paulette as she chased the other children across her parents' lawn, framing her within the limitations of a single word: beautiful. It was a term of endearment that could mean anything, but for her mother, beautiful meant clothes for her daughter that accentuated her creamy, freckled skin tone, dresses with little yellow flowers that brought out her natural glow as she marched past the tables of adoring relatives and family friends. Beautiful meant shoes with tiny heels that turned her walk into an assertive little strut, meant bobby pins that kept her curls shapely and full till evening. It meant fingernails that weren't chewed on, but were filed and painted once she was old enough to wear scoop-neck dresses and go on dates with boys who belonged to good families. It meant a willingness to smile, even when she wasn't asked to do so. People were superficial. They drew conclusions based on what their eyes could see. Her beauty was her honor, rendering her untouchable. She came from a good family, and none of her parents' friends would dare harm her, for she was one of their own. Their perfect smile suggested an innate capacity to please when the situation called for it, and for their parents, this was more than enough to reassure them that their daughters would never stray from the path of good. Beauty's function was to provide physical proof of goodness. What the eye could see, the heart could easily accept. Paulette would look back upon her charmed youth with equal parts fondness and grief when she returned to Baguio years later to give birth. In her childhood room, she felt like a ghost revisiting the life of a dead girl whose shell of a body she had once inhabited. How she had hated that perfect little body, that reflexively ready smile. The dainty lace dresses that filled her closet no longer fit her, and her swollen feet could no longer slip into the pumps that made her hips sway when she was a teenager. And yet she chose to return, believing that she could ease herself back into the innocence of her past life when she slipped into its physical space.
Wow, it's very descriptive.
Thank you. I actually skipped around, so I just read some choice paragraphs.
Oh, I can't wait to read that.
Well,
definitely. Okay, Monica, it's been great talking to you and learning more about you and your work. And congratulations on all your accomplishments. And let me know any work you have and when this novel gets published for sure.
Thank you so much, Christina.
Do stay in touch, okay?
Yeah, I will. Thank you. I'll follow you on Twitter.
Well, everyone, that is it for now. Please tune in next week for my next featured guest. In the meantime, have a productive and creative week. Bye, Monica.
Bye, Christina. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.